Hey everybody, this is Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner.
And this is Echo, also known as Air Rots backwards.
Kiv.
Yeah.
Yes. And you are watching episode 76 trombones of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast. What are we looking at today, Victoria?
We are looking at Walter's Magic Flying School Bus.
And?
What are we gonna do about Halloween?
Yes, because this
What
is
are
the
we gonna do
October.
about Halloween, Devin?
I don't know, I guess we'll find out in the second half of this episode because this is the October OAC episode.
Motivation to keep on watching. Please don't turn off the video. Please.
So, first off, episode 774, Walter's Flying Bus, written by Bob Hoose, based on the book by Ed Strauss and Josiah Thiessen.
I didn't know it's based on a book.
Yeah, it is very strongly just copied from a children's book, based on a real person.
Plagiarism. Gotcha.
Yeah. These are the things you'd know all about if you looked at any of the bonus stuff.
Probably.
All right, Victoria.
This way it remains a mystery for me, though.
Oh.
You get to see on-screen reactions, me finding out this stuff.
News first. Sorry, I totally forgot. My bad. Before we start our review, we have a bunch of news because it's been a while since we recorded. So I found out that the episode numbers I gave before were wrong for Album 60 and the OAC Season 3. Those places need to be switched. I have a theory about why they're being switched. So the Album 60 episodes come first, number-wise, and then the OAC Season 3 2016. And in the 2 episodes from now, when we do our Album 60 predictions, I will explain why. But thank you to Nathan Hobbs for emailing Focus and finding out that that was the case. So, other things. Janet Waldo, voice of Joanne Judith Woodston Allen, as of February 4th, 2016, 2 days ago for us. Happy birthday to her. She turned 96 years old.
Woo!
96. That's
96 trombones with the big parade.
With 110 cornets linked away. Yeah, it's a lot of years, so congratulations to Janet Waldo. You know, fabulous character, great
fabulous
actress.
Fabulous person, fabulous in general.
She's great.
I love you, Janet Waldo.
Album 61 has been recorded now, and the Adventures in Odyssey Facebook page has bits from that recording session, and eventually in a long while we will get to talk about stuff from that once we do our predictions for Album 61, which obviously is a ways away. A bit of a larger thing. I realized I forgot 5 Oddcast episodes ago to include the official guides and notes for Mistaken for Good, because it's a post-50 album, and so I forgot that the new guide had stuff about it, so I'm going to read that now. Behind the scenes, Mistaken for Good. This episode began with the idea, what would happen if Jace Mouse were forced into a situation where he would choose to do the right thing at great personal cost? Even though Jay made some bad choices in the episode, he ultimately had to face up to the consequences. Deciding just how good or bad Jay should be led to a lot of discussion among the team. It also gave the show more dimension. Jay's choice to sacrifice himself to save the elderly Mrs. Wilson from Vance's money-making scheme became an important moment in the development of Jay's character. So, now that the news is over, on to our episode now.
Devin!
Yeah,
Devin, I'm happy.
I know you are. I got that because of
the... This better be a sign. They keep Jay on for a very long time. I don't want Whit Hertford to leave the show.
Anyways, now, to our review. Episode 774, Walter's Flying Bus, the October 2015 OAC episode, written by Bob Hoose, based on the book by Ed Strauss and Josiah Thiessen. What's it about, Victoria?
First, you have to say I was right about everything I theorized about Jay for years.
Yeah, I've said that many, many times before.
I know, and I'm so happy. Okay.
And I never disagreed with you in the first place.
Yes, you did.
I really didn't.
Your eyes, they did. So in this episode, Olivia struts on into Whit's end.
You mean Camilla?
And Whit, obviously just having fun with messing with Olivia a couple episodes back, decides he wants to do it again with another Parker in another episode in another invention of his. So she struts in and she's just like, Matthew can fix stuff. Olivia has commitment issues. I want something I'm defined by. And so then Whit's just like, well, I'm gonna make sure you know that you're a special little snowflake, Missy, or else. And she's just like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I'm fabulous at sports and everyone recognizes that and I win a bunch of trophies, but it's not like that's something everyone can do. And I'm like, I hate sports. I can't do that. Shut up. And so then Wits is like, we're gonna go over to the most popular attraction in all of Wits End that we based an entire hiatus around and hyped up for years. the fabulous, used in every single episode, better than the Imagination Station.
Looked at smudged writing on hand. I can't even
remember what it's called. It's just...
He looks at the smudged writing on his hand. The Incantation Station.
Yeah, so we go into the Incantation Station, the Inspiration Station. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
And we get to meet Walter, who has a bus that does not fly, so the title's lying. And we get to meet many kids who have different handicaps, and they show that they're very capable in other abilities, and the handicaps don't hold them back. And I really, really liked that about this episode. And then Camilla is like, I have things I'm good at too. And then it ends, but not before Wit abandons her to the jungles of wherever they were. Where there's like all these ferocious beasts that could have eaten her, and he's like, see ya, kid. And yeah. So Wit, awful father. That was the episode.
Yeah, that's about it. So
So what did you think of the much anticipated return of the Inspiration Station, Devin?
Yeah, so we start off with Camilla believing that she is useless, that her siblings have lots of function in the world, but she's useless like an appendix. And I'm like, ugh! Appendix
isn't useless.
It's not useless. They're not vestigial.
That's what I said.
They have important immune functions during fetal and early postnatal development.
Yeah, I know. When she said that, I was like, you stupid child. It's not useless. I'm like, your mother's a nurse. Doesn't she teach you those things?
So, like you said, I was amazed and shocked that the Inspiration Station was coming back. I know.
I'm pretty sure I, paused it when Wit said that. I'm like, I thought we killed it a long time ago.
I know that I knew at the time that I'd already seen people, not saying good stuff about this episode. But at least we get to have an Inspiration Station episode, which has not happened since the eponymous episode back at the start of the third epoch. When we, you mentioned, Album 51 premiere.
Yep.
So, Camilla, obviously, right off the bat, she starts comparing herself to her siblings and their talents, and that reminded me of ice fishing with Monty, which is funny, because discovering your talents and worth is exactly what we thought the last episode, Hidden Gems, was going to be about.
Yep.
And then it turned out to be this.
Hidden Gems actually was the episode before this?
Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, Wit was just like, I bet that was the day before. He was like, well, screwed around with Olivia, now it's Camilla's turn. I hope the next episode, even though I know what the next episode is about in the Odyssey, is Wit messing with Matthew, because that would complete the trifecta.
It's like Luna messing with Dreams and getting all three of them in MLP Season 5. Okay, so, as soon as we saw the title of this episode and the album art, we were like, and then people didn't say.
I cringed, personally.
Yeah.
I was like,
So, they're in the Imagination Station, the Inspiration Station.
I had such higher hopes, because, the Inspiration Station, although, the episode wasn't that great an episode as it was built up to be. I think it's because it was too overhyped. It would have been a better episode if it didn't have so much hype surrounding it because of the hiatus. But, and this season, the way season 50 ended, no.
Yeah.
No, that's not, no.
Yeah, we've talked about that before.
But anyway, even though I don't have great things to say about it as an invention, it was a cool concept.
It was.
And, the library was so cool. And I thought we were going to get to see the library again. And we were going to get to meet, Jess Harnell's character in it. I can't remember what he was called.
It started with an M. It was Montague or something.
Yeah, something
Mortimer.
like that.
Was it Mortimer?
What?
Was it Mortimer?
I don't know. just Harnell's character. And so then I thought we were going to see that again, but we didn't. We went to the jungles of Brazil? Uganda. And we got
Victoria,
to meet
if they
Walter.
were just Brazil, they would have been Portuguese. These kids, like...
I haven't listened to this episode in a long time, Devin.
Okay.
So, yeah. I didn't like this episode.
So, at first, when things started happening and I could see the album art starting to assemble in the scene, I'm like, it could be worse. Because when I heard based on the art, when I heard Walter call for his friends, the episode art made me think that they were all going to be talking animals coming over to help. So, based on the art, because that's what it looked like. So I'm like, this is at least a few rungs above that. I was really confused about like how to think about the environment that we were in here, because on the one hand, we have a bunch of kids with physical disabilities belonging to a special care orphanage in Uganda, which seems to be based in like this harsh realism. But on the other hand, we're in this weird dreamscape where monkeys are painting a bus using live birds as brushes, and the paint cans are hanging from water buffalo horns.
I feel like if it had more verisimilitude, it would have been a better episode.
It was this really cognitively dissonant image, and I was like, I don't understand.
I felt like I was having like a weird trippy sequence while I was listening to it, and then there was like the choir chanting in the background, which was by far my least favorite thing about the episode. They were so disturbing. Creepy. I'm pretty sure I listened to that episode at night too, and I was like, right before I went to bed, I was scared. They're just like, Walter's flying bus, and I was like, what am I listening to?
I know, right?
It was like creepy chanting in the background, and I was like, no, this isn't how you have a whimsical moment. This is going to give nightmares to children.
Yeah. I was really disturbed by the rhyming, chanting narration children. That was really creepy.
It was so creepy, and it's like, it's this new thing I've been planning. I'm like, well, it should stop. It needs to stop. I don't want them to be like having a really sincere moment, like a really picturesque Hallmark moment in the inspiration station or in the imagination station. Like, can you imagine if they went back to Jesus's birth or something like that, and the chanting kids showed up and they're like, Jesus is being born, and I'm being like screaming. I'd be like, get out of here.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's probably like the narration rhyming of the book is probably what that is that they were saying.
Probably.
I
mean, it could have been worse. I thought it was going to go on a lot longer than it did.
Yeah.
But it was like spaced out. And I thought once they started doing it, it was going to last like the entire thing. They just kind of did it in montage moments.
Yeah. So. My perspective, I think, about lots of this stuff in the episode and the way it was structured changed a lot once I watched the online stuff and found out like the making of the episode. So, side note, it's worth noting this is our second episode in Uganda after the launch, which was the beginning of the Odyssey Adventure Club. I thought it was funny how Whit's description of Walter and his burn scars is literally identical to Terezi's blindness for her dream self in Homestuck. Because in Homestuck, Terezi was blinded in real life, but she was perfectly capable of seeing in her dreams on Prospect. And the dream selves in there can do anything, like Tavros could walk and fly despite the fact that he was paralyzed, or Jade could grow extra arms. Yet Terezi chose to remain blind in her dreams because she felt it was an integral part of her identity and not something that detracted from who she was, and she didn't need to change it in her dreams, which was the same thing that Walter did with his scars.
Did we find out if Walter was blind from birth? Because I can't remember.
No.
Okay.
I mean, he wasn't blind at all, but...
Oh. Wait, what was his...
He had burn scars all over his face and his arms.
Right. And then we also had a child who was mute, I believe. No, one who didn't talk much.
Well, yeah, she had cerebral palsy.
Pardon?
She had cerebral palsy.
What does that mean again?
It's, it's complicated. I won't go into it all. I believe it's autoimmune. It's what Zach Ganner has.
Oh, okay.
But there was one who couldn't walk.
And I think we had one who... Did we have one who was deaf?
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure I have a list in my notes here somewhere.
Yeah, I think we... Did we have one who was blind?
I can't remember now.
This episode is kind of forgettable.
We'll get to it. So, I feel that if I had learned to drive a standard from this episode instead of License to Drive, things would not nearly have gone as smoothly when I tried to get my L.
Turn the key which way?
Because
away from us.
I know this is a dream, but Wit still left an 8-year-old to drive a Class 4 vehicle.
I went over that in my description. There were also like tigers and stuff, and he's like, "Have fun, Camilla," and she's like, "Don't leave me." And he's like, "I'm leaving," and then he leaves. Like any family in fairy tale would, like any father in any series would.
So they do a push start on the engine.
Dalton Kern would have stayed for Camilla.
It's true. They do a push start on the engine. They get it going, and then they end up in the bad part of the forest, and then the chanting kids are whispering, "Come with us to a darkened forest," and I'm like, nope. You
just noped out of the episode. You're like, what am I willing to deal with today? Not this.
So they make the bus fly with their hope and imagination and dream power, and yet they weren't able to use those same powers to start the engine without needing a push start.
Well, I mean, there's rules, Devin.
Apparently.
There's rules of what you can and can't do.
Obviously, the unwritten rules of the Ugandan disability forest.
Exactly. Why don't you know this, Devin?
So, the bus flies out of the forest and they land in a village. Everyone gets adopted, and Camilla's like, I guess I am special after all.
I love how they just, like, drive into it, and everyone's like, we're here to adopt you. I'm like, well, that's that thread.
Yeah. The power of dreams. So,
yeah, I was thinking, like, that's a hasty conclusion in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So,
the episode...
Unless, did they establish that they were already going to be adopted and that's why they had to go down? I think they said that.
No, it's just I want to get on a bus and drive people to their dreams.
Oh, okay.
The episode felt...
It was a very hasty ending. Like, they went down, they all got adopted, and Camilla's like, I am special. Then she talks to Wit, and then the episode ends, and that's all in, like, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So
I feel like the episode overall felt fairly predictable, but in a weird way. Like, not the bus flying using kites made of bus seats and dreams.
Why were the monkeys painting using birds?
But the broken bus being a metaphor for uncovering the treasure in our junkie selves, and the kids being figures of sympathy, like, oh, look at these disabled orphans. If they can find their self-worth, so can you. It felt pretty cliche, and, you know, kind of harping on, like, the trope of, like, look at these poor African orphans with disabilities, like, trying to just pump as many tropes of sympathy as we can.
I mean, even though I didn't like this episode, I did like how they did acknowledge things. Like, they didn't really shy away from difficult subjects with the characters. I liked how they actually, like, talked about people with disabilities and how they're still fully capable of doing things.
Yeah.
But I just didn't like the episode. That was the only thing I liked about the episode, honestly.
Yeah.
But I feel like they could have gone a little bit farther with it. I also think they should have taken out the creepy kids, put them in, like, a Shyamalan horror film or something like that where they belong, and then just had less of the whimsical stuff. It should have been more situated in verisimilitude, in my opinion. Take away some of the animals. Like, it's okay to have a couple of them, but when you have, like, the tigers coming up and they're, like, using their whiskers to put little sprinkles on the bus or something like that, that's where I drop out. So
yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean, Devin?
Lots of it was weird, but the core message of it felt pretty cliche overall. But it is an adaptation of a book, which is based on a real kid and his actual dreams, so there is that at least. It still feels, like I said, that the story is playing to these cliche ideas of feeling better about yourself, because you can see people who have it way worse than you, and if they can do it, so can you.
I mean, like I said, I'm not dissing the book. Like, I know it's a kid's book and stuff like that. And I'm glad that there are kids' books where they have situations like this. Mm-hmm. Because it's good for kids to know about how capable they are of doing things themselves. And how capable people who have handicaps or something like that are, too. Mm-hmm. So, like, yeah. Like, that's a good thing to point out to children from a young age. But I didn't like the portrayal, really, that much.
Yeah.
There were some things I liked, some things I thought they did well, but overall, I was not a fan of this episode.
Yeah, and there was a slight pro-adoption message at the end, which is always good. I'm not sure that Camilla telling Walter's story to people is really going to draw them in, though.
I hope she tells it well, at least.
Yeah.
Because I don't see how she would be able to tell it very well, in all honesty. If she walks around telling people and then she gets to the part where, like, I have a feeling, like, she's going to mention, like, the kids chanting in the background and then, like,
And they're going to be like...
the monkeys using the birds as paintbrushes, and people are just going to walk away.
They're going to be like, Wit, why did you put our daughter in the LSD station? Which is basically what, when I first saw the art for this album, I'm like, it just looks like someone splashed LSD all over the place.
I think I said it looks like someone threw up a rainbow. In my opinion, this, like, the picture for this episode, it looks way too busy.
Yeah. It's so like, colorful and
there's like, way too much going on. Whereas a good example of, can you, if I mention album covers, can you put them down in the doobly-doo?
I can throw them up on the screen.
Okay, even better. So if you look at life expectancy cover, you see how Connie is in the middle, and it's a very busy cover, except for that doesn't detract from anything. Because even though there's a lot of stuff in it, it's just all in the background and it doesn't draw your main focus. You are able to focus on Connie, who is at the center of the picture, and it's done very well. Whereas in this one, it looks like someone threw up a rainbow on it. I mean, it's pretty, but in my opinion, it's way too colorful. There's way too much stuff going on. It's actually kind of, I don't know, and it's hard to notice where to look with this one. With life expectancy, you knew where to look. You knew you were supposed to look at Connie looking at the photo album. With this one, you can barely even see Wit and Camilla. It's so busy and there's so much stuff everywhere. And in my opinion, it should have way less stuff on it. I know they want to try and include everything, but yeah.
Yeah. And the online thing, I think there was a comment about, like, look closely at the album art and you can find all 10 species of animals that we mentioned in the episode. I'm like, you know, could have gone for a simpler, like, tone and not had all that stuff in there. But for all the ragging that we did on the episode, I will say the second time I listened to it, even though the message was simplistic about how it's easier to see the value in others than in yourself, but that doesn't mean that you don't have any value. I really needed that day that I listened to it, so I'll give it that.
Actually, the first time I listened to it, too, I was just like, yeah.
So, you know, we can't be that harsh on it because it was well-timed.
It's a good lesson.
In the video, we meet the real-life Walter, who really does want to be a bus driver and really lives at a Ugandan orphanage for disabled kids.
How old is he?
It was like 4 or something.
Oh.
He was the inspiration for the book called Walter's Flying Bus, which was then adapted into this episode. I suppose just like the Dropbox documentary became an episode last year. So after the orphanage employees talk about Walter and his bus paintings and his dreams and how he wants all of his friends to achieve their dreams together with him while he drives them there on his bus, then Bob heads to the zoo to see some of the exotic animals from the episode. And we hear a little bit about the history of Ikaiza, which is Walter's orphanage. And then finally, there's a lady from Focus talking about God having a plan and purpose for each person. So it turns out that Walter and Rachel and Deborah and Weru are all real kids at the orphanage there with the same disabilities described in the episode. So they're all real people. And they said that October's OAC fees will result in $500 going to the Ikaiza orphanage. Did I say 5,000 or 500?
I don't know.
$5,000 going to the orphanage. At least $400 of which are going to go to supplies for the art therapy program, which is what Walter used to paint the bus, which is what started all of this.
I don't know. I feel like this episode could be rated on 2 different scales. As, like, I know it's a kid's book, and, like, from everything I've heard, it sounds like a very good kid's book. But in my opinion, as an episode in comparison to other episodes, it's not very strong.
Yeah.
So
not as
I
bad
feel
as some people have said. I saw some people say, like, it's one of the top few worst episodes in the whole show, which I don't think, but...
I don't know. I just feel like it shouldn't be excused by the fact that it's a children's book.
I agree.
So even though I think it sounds like a very good children's book, and there were things I liked about this episode, and if it was just like a audio adaptation of the children's book, I would really enjoy it. But because it's an Odyssey episode, I'm gonna rank it differently. So I apologize to everyone who really likes it as a children's book. I'm not trying to like nag on it or anything like that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my merit will be based on it being an Odyssey episode first, because I didn't know it was a children's book.
So what is your rating then?
I'm gonna give it, I don't know. I've been rating first a lot lately. For like the past 3 times, you rate first.
All right. Phew. So yeah, it was an odd episode. It's only the second time we've seen the Inspiration Station, and we know that it works differently for everyone, but still, like, the children...
Yeah, but I feel like it didn't get the opportunity to work differently, because when it's doing the program to work specifically for everyone, just for inspiration in general, it takes them to the library. This was something pre-programmed. I wanted Olivia to get, like, her own thing going on and meet Walter that way. This was something already set up.
And it's interesting, because apparently Walter was the one who was, like, controlling this dream thing going on.
Yeah, and I was like, how does this work? If Walter suddenly turns evil, are we going to die or something?
Well, I mean, it's
Blackguard's revenge.
It's weird, because Walter himself is a subroutine of the program.
Robots are alive too, Devin.
Yeah. Thanks, Bernie. So, yeah, the children narrating was just really far off from anything we've ever had before, and it was
unique,
quite creepy.
But not in a good way.
The story had this constant, bizarre, dissonant struggle between, like, realism and surrealism. Because, like we said, you know, we have all these animals are helping the kids out, and they're like, the monkeys are dipping birds in paint and swiping their bodies, and then the birds are probably going to go off and die from lead poisoning afterwards.
I was just very thoroughly perplexed the entire time I was listening to it. And it kept on taking me out of the moment. Like, I'm in a creative writing class, and my teacher always says, you can tell when the story has reached, like, a weak point in storytelling if it can keep you, like, immersed in it the entire time. But once there's something that just takes you out of the moment completely, it's so absurd or just so unrelated to everything, that's when you need to work on it. And every single time we had something weird like that, like with the monkeys and the birds, it just took me out of the moment. Yeah. And I just didn't know what to make of it.
That was the confusing thing, is I didn't know how I was supposed to conceptualize this environment. How am I supposed to think of it? Is this some kind of fantasy scape where animals do these wacky and zany things? Or is this like a harsh, gritty reality of the jungle where there's so many kids with these disabilities, some of them acquired through abuse, who, you know, have all of these disadvantages put upon them in life and all this stuff. So it's like, which one is it? Mm-hmm. And same even in the story, right? It's like, oh, sometimes the bus can fly just on the power of our hopes and dreams. Like this,
but we have to push it downhill first.
Like it's the wagon
be able to achieve that.
Inside Out. We just sing to the bus and then it'll fly. Like this is Bing Bong's wagon. And yet, yeah, we also, like, it's broken down after we fix it up. We're going to have to push it to the top of a hill and do a push start just to get it to start. It was just this really inconsistent world and what tone it was going for.
That's a good word to summarize this episode.
Yeah, the tone was really inconsistent throughout, which was confusing.
And, like, I was just uninterested in this episode. I was kind of bored by it, honestly. The only points where I was, like, interested in what was going on was when they were talking about the disabilities behind the kids and how they overcome them. Those were the only points where I was just like, oh, tell me more. And then they just went off to do something ridiculous and the choir started coming in again. And I was like, no, I don't want to hear about that. I want to hear about these kids and how they live their everyday life. I'm not really interested in this. I want to find out about your hopes and dreams by you telling me about them and how they, like, play into your life. I don't want this fantasy sequence and, like, the kids chanting in the background, the animals coming in and being told about it through imagery, basically just by painting a bus. Like, I want to know about it in your own words.
The other weird thing is that, you know, Camilla's whole thing in this episode is she felt like she didn't have any special talents compared to her siblings, and then by the end, she does. But what actually happens to Camilla is she feels really hopeless about things. she gets them to do a push start on the bus because she was just copying something that she knew Matthew had done before. They keep on telling her that she has all of these gifts and talents, but never tells her what they are. And then she just suddenly starts believing it. It reminds me of that review of One Direction's music, how their songs are just like empty flattery so often, or especially their early songs are just empty flattery. For girls, how
Todd in the Shadows review.
They never focus on anything specific. They're like, we love you so much because of your attributes. The only thing we love more than your attributes are your features, and how their songs are full of this flattery that never describes the girl they're singing after. It's as generic as it could possibly be,
and
so that
how
it could
they
catch
never
anyone.
say like a specific woman's name or something like that, or define an age. They just say she, basically. And they say you a lot, and it's just like, because we love you. We love everything about you. Why don't you tell us about you? You're perfect. Even though you have all these things that aren't perfect about you.
That we're going to sing about. Like... But yeah, because it was just so vague. It was the same thing with Camilla. She's like, I'm useless. They're like, no, you have so many great gifts and talents and things. Like, your talents and things. And she's like, gee, I guess you're right. So it would have been nice if there were actual instances where she had some knowledge or skill that Camilla has that her siblings don't, that she was able to practically use to fix a problem.
Okay, it was the Todd in the Shadows Little Things review. So I wouldn't really suggest people go watch that, though, if they're sensitive to swears and stuff.
But, yeah, so that was just odd. It was weird throughout, and I'm going to give it 2.2 out of 5.
I'm going to give it...
pass.
I'm going to give it 1.5 out of 5. I just feel like it could have been a lot better, and we had a lot of missed potential moments in it.
Yeah.
So I already went over all my
Maybe just 2 out of 5. I'll go with that,
Pardon?
yeah. Just 2 out of 5.
For you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that was Walter's Flying Bus. Now, because it is our October review, we are tackling the 31st of October with kicking back to a very early episode. What are we going to do about Halloween from the lost episodes? So let's turn you all over to that right now. And we're back now for the second half of this episode as we discuss episode 45, What Are We Going to Do About Halloween? Written by...
I don't know, what are we, Devin?
Written by Paul McCusker. What happens in this episode, Victoria?
So in this episode, they talk about sacrilege and heathens, and why Halloween is awful, and how everyone who celebrates it is awful, and they're all terrible. And then Will Ryan plays this really stuck-up guy, and Connie's like, I'm a heathen, and she dresses up as Cinderella or Snow White for Halloween, and goes to a party. They throw another party where it's like a Christian party. They dress up as biblical characters, and then they have much more fun than the heathens, and it ends.
And Mr. Renfield is a big thing in there.
I mentioned Will Ryan.
Oh.
I said Will Ryan plays a jerk.
That's true. He does.
Yeah.
Okay, so, first off, from the guide, why this episode was lost, because it's in the lost episodes. As you may know, celebrating Halloween is one of those subjects that challenges Christian parents. What Are We Going to Do About Halloween was written to give parents a few alternative ideas to Halloween, hoping to find middle ground. Or so they thought. As it turned out, parents holding different views about all aspects of Halloween didn't approve of the position Odyssey took in the episode, so they put the program aside.
Dev, we have like this red versus blue thing going on. Like, I'm blue team and you're red team. And it's funny because your room is red and you're red. My room is blue.
Your room's really blue right now.
I'm blue.
You do look blue.
And this is amazing. I'm blue team. Blue team for life.
A red team for life. Okay. So this is one of the very early episodes, which is still early enough in the show that the episode gave like a solid 30-plus second skit to Chris at the beginning, like before the theme even began. That's how you know an episode is really early on.
Yep. You should lower your camera a bit. There you go.
Mr. Renfield's name should be addressed. So
a little bit more. There.
Renfield is the name of a character from the Bram Stoker Dracula novel, and the name represents a trope for the slave or servant of a vampire, or the slave or servant of a general maniacal villain, whether they are willing or unwilling as a servant. So I'm rather curious about how that relates to this episode. Was the name picked just because it's associated with the spooky and the Halloween themed? Or is it more detailed? Is it saying that Mr. Renfield is an unwilling, unintentional negative force in the episode, and that through his insistence on total abstinence from everyone and everything on October 31st, he was driving his children and others to be more likely to rebel and celebrate Halloween?
I feel like he's involved with Halloween whether he likes it or not.
That might be reading a little bit too much into it, since the final consensus seems to be that he had the authority to make those choices for his kids, but he shouldn't try and control the other kids, and that he wasn't in the overt wrong, even if Whit disagreed with him. It's more likely just a generic Halloween reference, just like Renfield Pumpkin, who is one of the playable characters in Peggle.
I remember the first time I was playing Peggle and I saw like Renfield and I was like, he's an Odyssey character.
Yeah, it's only because of Peggle that I knew that Renfield had some connection to Halloween. I was like, oh, it's a reference. It's funny how they had Pastor Williams in this episode, played by Chuck Bolte, given that he's George Barkley, who would later go on to replace himself and become the pastor of said same Odyssey Community Church.
It was foreshadowing, Devin. Get with the times.
That's true. I think, based on what we can infer about Wit's line, it really explains why Wit's End has such a library the size of what it does, if Wit still has lots of the books from his original UPF encyclopedia research in it.
I liked, what's his face? I liked the kids in this episode.
Brad and someone.
Yeah, Brad and Oscar, I think. No. Brad and the other guy.
It's not the same Brad from Wit's Flop.
I liked the other guy more than Brad, but they were entertaining. They were good foils for each other. I like the scene where they're explaining what Halloween is, and they're kind of like throwing some comedy in there. When I was little, that was way funnier, though. When I listened to it again, I was like, this isn't as funny as it was when I was a kid. It's just kind of slightly annoying, but they're still kind of cute as kids, so I let them get away with it.
I like how Mr. Renfield has this idea of, my kids were upset, I won't let them go to your party. This is obviously your fault, and you should cancel the party to fix things. It's almost like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So to dive right into the deep, meaty themes of this episode, it's really interesting to me how controversial this episode ostensibly was. Because I feel like, considering Focus's very conservative general stance, that this is a fairly balanced episode. There's a nice middle ground between doing all the normal Halloween stuff and total abstinence from everything. I actually, personally, abstained from Halloween celebrations for many years upon first hearing this episode, from around 2008-ish, all the way basically up until this last year. It's funny in retrospect, because I was acting probably, in a way, more like Mr. Renfield than Whit about it, although I was not trying to guilt or foist my convictions on anyone else.
You made me feel guilty for so many years.
That's because you're you. I'm allowed to do it to you.
Yeah, but like ever since we started listening to the episode, because we heard it right before Halloween, and I was like, Devin, are you going to go trick-or-treating with me? And you're like, no, I'm going to stay home and listen to what are we going to do about Halloween, you heathen? And I'm like crying, and I'm like, have my costume on, and I'm like, okay, fine. And then one year I had like a monster mask on, and you're just like, you're awful. And I was like, why are you
I don't think I said that, but yes, but, I've learned.
Yeah, I celebrated Halloween until I think grade 9 or something like that. Like, I went out in costume. I still wear costumes every Halloween, except for I didn't this year. Actually, I wore my Sarah Labyrinth outfit this year. Yeah, I wore my Jareth Labyrinth outfit this year for Halloween, but I always dress up. I haven't gone out to grab candy. I just kind of like, I'm forced to give candy out. I'd rather just keep it and eat it myself, but
yeah,
my
well,
parents
at least
are
you
like,
still got
no.
candy here.
Yeah, we still, people usually still give us candy, just that we know. Like,
Plus,
my
you got the
teachers-
leftover candy that you bought to give out to people. I didn't get any
Yeah.
candy here.
Boo-hoo, Devin, you went to Halloween parties. I didn't go to any parties.
Yeah. Well, I didn't go to the Halloween party here.
But yeah, I
doing
still
homework,
dress up because, in my opinion, it's just a day where everyone cosplays more, and who am I to turn away a good cosplay day?
Exactly. So you can call it character development on my part. As the years went on, I slowly came to realize more and more that Halloween doesn't stand for the things that it used to very much. There is certainly a lot of weird and pagan things around it still, and I will certainly avoid those, but cosplaying and having fun with your friends does not mean that you're engaging in anything bad, as long as you know what you are and aren't celebrating, which it turns out is the whole theme of this episode. Last year, which is supposed to be this year that this episode came out, in 2015, the reason I finally ended up dressing up was actually because I was going to a Welcome to Night Vale show on October 31st with some friends, and so I was compelled to make a cosplay for it, which became, in effect, my Halloween costume. So it's funny to look back at this episode now and see how I thought I was Wit for so long when I was acting more like Mr. Renfield. So I'd like to now think, as most of us would in most circumstances, that I'm more like Wit now.
There were 2 years after I listened to this episode where my church was doing events on Halloween, actually. They had, like, a movie night where they had, like, pizza, pop, and popcorn, and we would just watch movies. And it was aimed mostly towards kids. And they were really fun, actually. And I was in the age demographic at the time for it. So, and it was like, hey, food, movies, my friends are there. Why wouldn't I want to go? So I just wore my costume to that. And I also did, I believe, a little bit of candy collecting beforehand from my relatives.
So overall, I really like the balance that this episode took. It acknowledges that Halloween's origins were rooted in evil ideas and celebrations, but that it's also changed a lot since then. It acknowledges that Halloween still has ties to those ideas, but it's not associated the same way it used to be. And points out that any day or any celebration can be used for good and evil, good or evil, depending on how you treat it, even Christmas. After all, Christmas was converted out from Yule and Saturnalia and a bunch of other pagan festivals, and many of our traditions for Christmas originate from those, as we know from BTV Redeeming the Season. And if Christmas is redeemable because we celebrate Jesus' birth, then why wouldn't Halloween be redeemable because we're celebrating God, togetherness with friends, good harvest, and candy?
I really wish you were in my creative writing, or my children's literature class, Devin, so much. Because I'm the only person who practices religion in it, and everyone thinks I'm insane and have a brain disorder for doing so. And have said that to me directly in class.
So the party in the episode where kids forbade the use of the word Halloween, it's a bit overboard, I think, because the name is just a name, and you can celebrate the same principles and virtues under the banner of either holiday, though I do understand why they did it the way that they did. Like Whit said, the principle of the lesson to the kids went beyond the scope of one day. It was a lesson about how to deal with the world around us as Christians, that when we see something that doesn't sit right with us spiritually, to not be complacent about it. To quote Joseph in the Bible, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good." Also, if you're having a problem with your family, then sell them and throw them into a hole, apparently, is another thing that Joseph said.
I love the Joseph animatronics so much.
We can take the things around us, no matter the circumstances, and give them up to God to be turned around for His glory, no matter how young we are. That can take a lot of different forms, but this is a great example to show how kids can start recognizing and reworking culture around them to glorify God, even when they're young.
When Tom came in, and then he just mentioned the word Halloween, and then everyone like shushed him, I yelled, "Burn the witch!" when I was listening to it.
I feel like in the description of modern Halloween that they gave in this episode, it's still a little bit exaggerated in terms of the evilness of Halloween. I mean, like, they talk about kids dressing up in evil costumes of horrific creatures.
And then you have Connie at the end, she's like, I dressed up like Snow White, and Wit's like, oh, that's cute. Yeah. And I was like, no, she's a heathen.
Her in costumes of horrific creatures and all the dangerous vandalism and gruesome pumpkin faces and such. But I feel like I don't really feel like that represents Halloween very well in my experience. Vandalism and stupid teenager stunts on occasion, yes, but it seems like most jack-o'-lanterns or smiles or silly joke faces these days, most kids dress up as superheroes or Disney characters. And for me, the most occult part about Halloween is usually just what they show on TV throughout October, and that's not too terribly hard to ignore.
Yeah, just like the horror movies and stuff like that, which,
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to watch them, you do. If you don't want to watch them, you don't, and no one really cares.
Exactly.
So, I mean, like, I kind of have this little tradition where I watch... I think I've... Even though I say tradition, I think I've only managed to do it once, where I watched, like, Halloween Town. I usually like to watch a couple Halloween movies. Like, I believe I watched Coraline and The Corpse Bride, and I tried to watch Nightmare Before Christmas, but I never got the chance to. Oh, I watched Paranorman this year, so I watched a couple movies because I was just like, I'm feeling the festive spirit, and so, yeah, basically I wanted to watch creepy stuff, but I sometimes watch creepy stuff, and that stuff isn't actually that creepy.
And I got to go see the Night Vale show, get involved in the Murder Mystery Dinner Theater in the episode. It was great.
So,
yeah, do you have more to say about things, or Trey?
I don't know. It kind of comes down to personal opinions with this one.
Yeah.
Like celebrate Halloween if you want to. Don't if you don't want to. I know our mom actually went to a Bible-themed costume party when she was younger.
1 year, yeah.
And there was a guy who was like in a giant C, and it was red, like the letter C, and he's just like, I'm the Red Sea and stuff.
And there's someone who's built out of the shoe height, yeah.
Yeah. So, I can't remember what mom was. I don't think she remembers either.
I don't remember. But yeah, that's the thing I really appreciate this episode in terms of the balance is that, you know, coming off, or I guess at this point we haven't yet talked about Out of the Woods and such. But this episode is just really great in the fact that it doesn't make these really harsh, definitive, like, yes, you must celebrate Halloween and it doesn't matter at all and can't have influence.
I was thinking of Out of the Woods too.
But it's also not like, this is, if you celebrate Halloween, you are a heathen. You cannot party on this day. You must just stay inside and fast and pray, otherwise you're going to hell. It's, it's pretty open-ended in terms of, this is what Halloween was. This is how it's led to what we have today. And here's some general guidelines about, the ways of understanding, the way that days work and our celebrations and our intentions behind them. And so you can celebrate or you cannot celebrate. You might celebrate Halloween. You might call it something else. But, there's a lot of different ways you can go on it. And that's up to you and your own personal convictions about how you want to handle that.
See, that's the problem I'm having so much with my children's literature class right now in my college. Like, we're going through history, like, children's literature through the time, so we're going through, like, with Puritan stuff, and it's all very heavy-handed, like, if you do this, you will go to hell, and stuff like that, and I'm the only Christian in my class. Basically, everyone else is either doesn't care or is an atheist, so that's difficult, because they keep on asking my opinions about things that, like, I don't really know how to answer. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, what do you think of this? And I'm like, well, I think it was a little heavy-handed. And they're like, so you don't believe that people will go to hell if they don't repent? I'm like, no, I do believe people will go to hell if they don't repent, but it's like a different matter entirely. Like, and then I said, like my pastor, for example, doesn't run up to people and he like screams at them and then he expects them to like follow him and his religion, basically. And then someone in my class is like, that just means he's not dedicated to his religion. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. And it's very frustrating because I've basically gotten to the point where I don't really comment that much anymore because we're already like over a month into the course. And people keep on asking my opinions, but I know they don't really care.
Yeah.
Because every single time I try to say something, they always dispute it. And they say, like, well, that's one way to look at things. And I'm like, yeah, it's called an opinion. You just asked for it. And But like
That's
I can't
good.
say that to them basically.
That's good.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah,
And
it's interesting.
it's a very stressful environment. I like the class, but I come home with headaches sometimes.
I understand that.
And I really wish I wasn't the only Christian in my class. Like I'm just sitting there and I'm thinking like Devin and James would be able to talk about this so much better than I would. And
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I think that's one of the reasons it's nice that we have the Oddcast, because in analyzing and discussing these spiritual themes, it helps us to better understand them and be able to talk about them.
That's one of my favorite things about the Oddcast. It's like helps me form deeper opinions on things, and I really appreciate that. It also helps me with my analysis. I know I wouldn't be as good at analysis as I was without this, and
Which
that
is good
really
for an
says
English
something
major.
because I'm an English major, so basically everything I have to do is analysis, and I know I wouldn't be able to do it to the extent I can without this. So
Yeah,
I feel like the
so,
Oddcast has helped me grow as a person.
yes. Thank you, Oddcast.
Thank you, listeners and watchers.
Yes, and thank you, viewers, for sticking with us for all these episodes. So back to the episode now. Speak of the devil.
I get the joke.
So the episode, I feel like, yeah, it was really good because it gave us this openly balanced thing where it's like, it's up to you how you want to do this, depending on your faith and your convictions, how you want to handle this. Like, Whit decided on a course of action, and he opened this invitation for kids to be like, okay, this is a thing we want to take part in. And Mr. Renfield is like, nah, son. And even though, I imagine most of us believe that Mr. Renfield was in the wrong, in the episode, they're still like, okay, he can't, try and impose his thoughts on all the kids in the church, which is what he was trying to do. But he can be like, this is how I feel, and this is what I'm going to do for my family, which is allowed. He can do that as a parent, just so long as he doesn't try and force that upon everyone else.
I feel like the nice thing about this album is I can't even say it's like one extreme or the other with the two sides. It's just kind of like not really. It's like one almost extreme and another almost extreme, and then a nice middle ground.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say if Mr. Renfield really did go out to put more effort into trying to like convert everyone to his ideas, and they went more heavy-handed with like the Connie Halloween storyline, which was just kind of like tacked on at the end, then I feel like they would have been extremes. But I feel like they didn't cross the line into becoming extremes.
Yeah, I feel like it would have been really easier for this episode to like hammer down like Whit was right and Connie and Renfield were wrong. But it was nice and balanced. They showed Connie and Mr. Renfield and Whit and his party, and they showed like where Halloween came from on a factual basis and some of the places where it is today. And then basically left it open for the audience to decide what they want to do with that. It didn't tell you what to do, it just provided you with the facts, provided you with some possibilities, and said, do with this what you will. Which I'm really impressed with, to be honest.
Same.
It's good. It was a really good way to do it, I think, and I'm impressed with that. So I will give the episode 4.5 out of 5.
I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 because I don't find it to be the most compelling of episodes, but I think it handled its lesson very well. I know how Connie feels with like the whole, I just wanted to have a fun time, but then people started getting stupid, so I just kind of wanted to leave. Do you think like the party she went to, it kind of sounded like there was drinking at the party?
Probably.
Like it sounded like it was implied.
I imagine so.
Do you think Connie used to drink?
She might have. Based on what they say in Connie, it's entirely possible.
Like, it kind of sounds like she used to, based on what they said in Connie, and I didn't think about that until re-listening to this episode this last time.
Yeah, it's...
Because, like, in Connie, they're like, hey, these people are out of town, let's go to their house and raid their liquor cabinet and stuff, and she was like, about that.
It is probable.
So, yeah.
So, yeah.
Just something I thought might be interesting to point out.
Yeah. So, those are our ratings for that episode. So, I guess that's the end of another day. It was mighty serious, I had to say. Something. Watch the tower explode.
What was that song?
Steven Universe.
Oh, right. Yeah, I've only heard that one like, I don't know, once, twice.
So, next time on the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast, very exciting, we are finishing album 59. We'll be doing Out of the Woods, and Let's Get Together, and then doing our review of album 59.
Out of the Woods. I bet that's going to be an awful episode, Devin.
So, next time we'll get to that. Until then, thank you for joining us on our side of the YouTube. This has been Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner.
And it actually hurt me to call Out of the Woods a bad episode as a joke.
And you've been watching The Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast.
Peace.